morning and welcome wherever you are to this RTS London production focus event. My name is Aradhna Tayal and I'll be your host today. I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by a fantastic panel to tell you all about Portrait Artist of the Week. This is the new weekly live version of the Sky Arts flagship programme, Portrait Artist of the Year. Each week, a celebrity guest with a guest artist, all remotely from their homes, sits and presents a 4-hour live show on Facebook, where viewers can watch the process and indeed join in from their own homes and create their own portraits, which they can send in on Instagram. The show has absolutely taken off and over 2,000 portraits are being shared by viewers each week around the globe. So without any further ado, let's meet our panel. If I may, I'd like to ask you to introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about your role in the show. I'm going to start with someone who in fact is in little need of introduction, Joan Bakewell.
Right, well, I give the illusion of holding the programme together, whereas in fact I'm simply the front person because it's Adam whom I only hear in my ear. It's a delight to see his face for the first time for a long time. So it's my job to link, and so I have to throw from my laptop over to you, over to the judges, over to whoever, and that's quite a responsibility. But it's a sort of background to the actual meat of the programme, which of course is the painting. Now the problem for me is that I'm a technophobe, so I'm constantly anxious about whether it will work, but I have to say it's run so smoothly. It's very reassuring, and I'm getting a little tech happy these days, but that's what I have to do.
Thanks, Joan. And Phil Edgar-Jones. Phil, I think you might be on mute.
Do you know, this is the most commonly used phrase at the moment, isn't it? You're on mute. Yes, my name is Phil Edgar-Jones. I'm the director of Sky Arts, and I think we're going to go into the background of this in a little while, but I commissioned the programme when Danielle came to me. We were sort of casting around for things to do during lockdown, and this was the perfect thing, but I think we'll get into the background of that in a little bit, but I commissioned it.
Thanks, Phil. And Danielle Graham.
Hello, yes, I'm Danielle Graham. I'm the executive producer of Portrait Artist of the Week and one of the co-execs on Portrait Artist of the Year with Sam Richards and Stuart Preble at Storyvault Films. And I sort of kind of started agitating with Phil and Benedetta Pinelli, the commissioning editor, to get this commissioned and, you know, devise the format.
Thanks. And we have Sam Richards.
Hey, I'm Sam Richards, and I'm, as Danielle said, one of the co-executive producers of Portrait Artist of the Year and one of the directors of Storyvault Films. And my role in Portrait Artist of the Week has been booking our wonderful sitters.
Thank you. And we've got Kimberly Kraus. I'm afraid it's that mute word again.
Yes, that's right. Good morning, my name is Kimberly Kraus and I am a painter and was lucky enough to be a participant and finalist in Portrait Artist of the Year 2017 and was also fortunate enough to paint in a virtual session on Portrait Artist of the Week some week and a half ago.
Thanks, Kimberly. We'll hear more about that in a little bit. And Adam Noble.
Yeah, good morning. Good morning, everyone. My name's Adam Noble, and I'm the director on Portrait Artist of the Week. Outside of this, I work at Sky for Sky Production Services. I'm a vision mixer, and I run a team, look after the team of vision mixers there at Sky. I mean, on the show, obviously, it's just trying to get everything together. So, you know, just making sure everybody's technology works. We have rehearsals. We make sure that all our sitters and artists are happy, and that's sort of one of the sort of biggest things that we have to overcome. But yeah, there'll be more about that later. But yeah, Adam Noble, director.
Great, including people not being on mute, I guess.
Yeah.
And Charlie Sever.
So I'm the live producer on the show, which means working on the script and working through the script on the day, being on talkback to Adam and the graphics team and the tech team, making sure that we are, well, we're basically following where we should be going and feeding editorial decisions into Adam via the talkback.
Thanks, Charlie. And we have Ben Burdon.
Hello everyone. I'm Ben Burdon. I'm studio manager at Sky. I've been at Sky for 30 years and I've worked in all areas from news through sport to light entertainment. And on this show, I draw together the technical teams to help make everything work.
Fantastic. It's so great to have you all here. Thank you. What a panel. We only have about an hour, so I'll kickstart the discussion very soon, but I'd also like to invite you to send in your questions if you're watching this at home, or we're all at home. So if you have a question, then you can use the chat function on YouTube on the side of your window, or you can tweet us at RTS London, that's all one word, and we're using the hashtag PAOTW, that's PAOTW. So I'd like to start with you, Sam, with a little background about Portrait Artist of the Year, which I suppose is sort of the parent programme, if you like. It's been running for a few years now. Could you tell us a bit about how it came about and the format? And also, what have you learned about the popularity of this kind of art?
Well, one of our co-executive directors on the main series, who's also director of Storyvault Films, Stuart Preble, had made with Sky Arts the coverage of the Anthony Gormley 4th Plinth, which, as you know, was a kind of mass participation public-facing project. And at the time, and Phil has obviously kind of built on this over the years, the kind of projects that they were looking for more of at the channel were things that could be done in a public arena and have a kind of in a precinct where people could come and enjoy it. And so Stuart had been just thinking about what we could do next and had been nurturing this idea of a mass painting competition. And so that's how we just started developing it. And when Phil and his team, first started working with us, and in fact, in the first series, the Portrait Artist of the Year, we took it. We didn't film it in one place. We filmed all over the country, and that was the beginning of always having and encouraging members of the public to come along. And having as much of a kind of live event as a televised event. And over the years, as you know, we now, for many years, we filmed it at the Wallace Collection and now at the Battersea Arts Centre. And we still encourage people to come along and participate and, be part of the painting day. So that's how it kind of evolved in the first place, and it's just taken a different shape as the years go by. One of the things that we have always said is, this is like, the Bake Off for art. This is not a niche art program. This is something that really feeds into things that we all used to do when we were kids, like baking or painting, and then we were told we need to stop doing that now and put these kind of childish things away and do serious things. But and as has been proved in the Of the Week version, with people just participating globally, there's something incredibly soothing, incredibly stimulating and creative about watching paint dry, and actually about process. People love process. And also, when we, compare it to Bake Off, it is that, this is kind of warm and inclusive and multi-generational, but also can be shout at the telly. It's very competitive. People, really buy into the artists they want. They root for them throughout the series. And so it's got all those lovely elements of it's very rare and very privileged to be able to make a series which, outside the broadcast element of it, has a real life beneficial application to all our wonderful artists who contribute. And Kimberly will probably say more about that, how it, hopefully has a sustaining and long-term benefit for artists in their careers.
I love that Bake Off of painting. That I think it's really interesting how people can take part, either with of the year, being able to go and watch artists in action and have that rare privilege of seeing the process as well as taking part at home. So, I mean, Phil, Portrait Artist of the Year has been a real highlight of the Sky Arts channel. What kind of reaction are you getting, or were you getting from the audience?
You mean for Portrait Artist of the Year, or for this in particular? Because it's certainly one of our one of our kind of key brands. I mean, the philosophy of Sky Arts is really, there's kind of 3 pillars to our philosophy in terms of, sort of program making. There's accessibility, so making the arts more accessible and allowing more people sort of access to take part in the arts, which leads into participation, which is a huge part of why, as Sam mentioned, Portrait Artist of the Year and Landscape Artist of the Year are so successful, because we know that by allowing people to participate, there's a higher sort of engagement rate. And so accessibility, participation, and kind of diversifying our voice and inclusivity and allowing kind of everybody in. Those are the 3 pillars of our activity. And that's why Portrait Artist of the Year has always been so successful. And it's something that I think is really caught on with Portrait Artist of the Week as well. I mean, it's been interesting. At the start of lockdown, of course, there was a lot of, it was quite difficult for producers, broadcasters. We had to stop quite a lot of what we were doing and kind of rethink everything. A lot of our programs are on pause, and we're trying to sort of reboot them at the moment. And Danielle came along with this just at the right time when we were, looking to see what we could do on Sky Arts, particularly during the lockdown period. One of the things we did was to make much more of our content available free on YouTube. We supported NT Live, putting their theatre broadcasts out on their YouTube channels and connecting them into our Sky Q page. And this came along just at the right time when we were thinking about what we could do that kind of kept our audience occupied as well as engaged. And could it be done technically? Our incredible people at Sky Production Services made that happen. Could it be done editorially? The incredible team at Storyvault, which you'll hear more about, sort of came together to sort of make that happen. Joan being a technophobe, I didn't know you were a technophobe, Joan, because you're taken to it like a duck to water. It's absolutely seamless the whole way through. And you can see sort of week on week, technically, editorially, it making massive leaps forward. And I mean, I'll maybe talk a bit later about the kind of engagement we've had with it, but it's grown and grown every week. And it's been a sort of really interesting, kind of risky experiment, which has paid off.
Yeah, I really love that that side of things. I think it's really engaging when you can see a little bit of the process, and we're all having those Zoom moments at home. So I love it when you see on TV someone saying, "Oh, you're on mute," and you just say, "Yes, I did that earlier."
And actually, something interesting about it, the length of time it's on. You get a bit of masterclass, you get a bit of celebrity, you get incredibly open, revealing conversations between the artist and the sitter as well. So there's something about it being 4 hours long as well, which is really compelling, I think. I mean, I don't paint, but I sit and watch it on a Sunday morning.
So Danielle, I mean, you've turned what is a really challenging time in lockdown into this brilliant opportunity. So I understand you were shortly due to start production on the next series of Portrait Artist of the Year. How did you manage to very, very quickly pivot and create Portrait Artist of the Week?
Well, we were a week away from filming Portrait Artist of the Year. So like everyone, when lockdown came, we were a little bit blindsided. So, we talked a little bit in the office about whether there was a way we could do it where we had celebrities sitting at home, and then we went off and, like everyone else, spent a couple of weeks just kind of coming to terms with quite what was going on. But it became quite clear quite quickly that lots of people were being creative during lockdown. I mean, I had a conversation with the venerable Joan Bakewell, who had bought herself an easel, having never painted before. And I just realized that, our program is made for lockdown, because we're all at home suddenly. We've all got more time on our hands than ever before. Our program, Portrait Artist of the Year, has always had huge artist engagement. We've got an incredible resource, because about 1,500 people applied to Portrait Artist of the Year and have been doing for 7 years. So we've got sort of 10,000 artists that have applied to that over the years. And we've got these incredible roster of winners. And so I started wondering whether we could marry together these brilliant winners who, to be honest, we've been pestering Phil for a long time to make a kind of where are they now, because they've all gone on to great things. So I started talking to Phil and Benedetta at Sky. They got Sky Production Services involved, and we started sort of kicking this idea around and thinking about how we could do it. And it went through quite a few incarnations. And I'll be honest, when we first put it on the air, we thought it was going to be so much more sort of, I don't know, we thought it was going to be a kind of live stream, and it was all going to be quite easy. It wasn't easy. It was the steepest learning curve ever, but it's been incredibly rewarding as a result.
Well, we'll hear a bit more about the technology behind it. So what made you choose this format and to have this 4-hour live stream on Facebook?
Well, we have 4 hours during the programme now when we record Portrait Artist of the Year. So obviously we're in a different position from the rest of you in that we've seen this happen and we know it's fascinating. Having said that, you know, obviously artists get breaks. It's 4 hours recorded over 6 hours for the main series, and there were some nerves. We were a bit unsure, is this going to be interesting? I mean, I don't know any other format that puts two creative people together for 4 hours where you can just listen to a conversation. But we decided, I mean, exactly like with the very first Portrait Artist of the Year, when we first filmed it in Trafalgar Square, we had all sorts of things going on around the outside because we weren't convinced it was interesting enough to watch people paint. Well, over the years, we've learned it is interesting enough to watch people paint. People love it. And so with this, we also realized that actually there's something to be said for just doing it across 4 hours and just seeing what happens. What I like about the way we've done it is that actually some of the most interesting things are some of the most interesting conversations are the unedited ones, actually. You know, it's been really interesting watching an unedited conversation take place because you get the nuances in between. With Portrait Artist of the Year, we pride ourselves in making quite a kind of glossy, slick programme, but we quickly realised that one of the great things about this program is the liveness and the informality. So yeah.
Well, let's take a quick look at the show. In this clip, we have artist Kimberly Kraus, who we'll talk to in a moment, painting Noel Fielding.
And so it's time now for me to introduce today's sitter. Well, he is broadcaster and comedian Noel Fielding. Noel, how are you doing? How do you feel about the lockdown?
I'm actually enjoying it. I'm doing a lot of painting myself and I'm hanging out with my 2-year-old daughter, Dali. So I'm not having a bad time, you know? So
I like to start really kind of loose and in one color. I've chosen a color that's not quite electric pink today, but a purple.
Nice color. Purple. I like that looseness. I've been questioning now whether that's finished. You've nailed it in one stroke.
Oh, that'd be fantastic.
The great thing about painting outside is when you bring paintings in, they always look better, which I thought was a fantastic thing.
That is fantastic.
I've been recently painting a lot outside and the light's so extraordinary that I think when you do bring them in, they do somehow look tighter or they look better than you realise, which is a nice little tip for anyone. Try painting outside. Bring them in. Great. Yeah, and you won't be disappointed.
Joan, you've been broadcasting for many years. I'm sure you've got a whole wealth of stories from that. But I'd love to hear your thoughts of when you first heard the concept behind Portrait Artist of the Week.
Well, because of my age, I'm in an isolated group, so I was welcomed anything that would challenge me to, use my wits and keep my spirits up. So I thought that was a great idea. I thought, of course, it would be impossible, but I'd have to give it a go. So I like a new challenge. I like a new format. I mean, I've followed through my career all the different forms that television has taken. And it seems to me that this is a form that won't go away. I mean, we've discovered something rather special here, which is we can speak across nations to each other immediately and get a response. And it seems to me that it might well revolutionize diplomacy, international affairs, business. This is a technique for putting people in touch with each other. The fact that it's art, it of course particular delight to me, but I realize now what an amazing skill it is.
Absolutely. And how has it been presenting live from your own home? I mean, everybody is doing this now. How's that been?
Well, it's just very strange because you have to be part of a broadcasting unit and therefore put on a little bit of a formal hat. You know, here I am, I'm working. But on the other hand, you know, I live in one vast room, which includes its kitchen. So the kettles are boiling and things are going on around me. So it's an interesting departure for your own temperament. You know, are you out there in the public domain as you would be in a studio? No, you're not, but you're not entirely domestic. So what has emerged is a kind of, inside my head, is a new kind of me, which has compromised these two and sort of created a new relationship with broadcasting. And do you feel that that's coming across in your work? Are you engaging with the camera in a different way and with the audience? I had trouble, I don't know whether I've got it right today, in actually looking at the camera. I wanted to look at the screen instead rather than directly at the camera. But of course, I'm perfectly happy, as all my team know, Danielle particularly, I'm very dependent on her advice and help. And I know that I can turn to any one of them, and they're enormously supportive. I mean, terrifically supportive. They warn me, we practice, we know the timing. It's nice to get it right, the countdown coming to you, 4, 3, 2, 1, cue, just like it would be in a studio. So all of those skills are still operating, but the flow is quite different. Thank you. And Kimberly, you're joining us from Munich in Germany, so you're living proof of this global communication that we've enabled. Firstly, I'd just like to say I loved your portrait of Noel, and I really enjoyed hearing about your process right from the very beginning when you started talking about the colour palette that just looking at Noel brought up in your mind. So we have got a clip showing how your painting of Noel turned out. So perhaps we can have a look at that first for anyone who hasn't seen it, and then we can come back and just talk a bit about how that experience was for you. So let's take a look. It's just fantastic. So you're in your own space at home in Munich, that you're painting live on Facebook. You're talking to the camera at the same time about your process, and you're building your relationship with your sitter, Noel. Talk about multitasking. How has it been for you? What was your experience?
It was both very exhilarating and completely petrifying. After I agreed to do it, I thought I've made a terrible, terrible mistake. And my stomach was all in knots. I think Adam probably saw me before the camera was on me, sort of bending over and taking deep breaths and hoping I could actually get my pulse to come down enough to talk and paint. And my family will know that I am a known monotasker. So it was going to be quite a challenge. But I would agree with Joan in the fact that it's live and that other people are painting along. It's something you're doing with, you know, there was an aspect where you're sort of being observed and you feel like you're sort of, you know, compromising this private and public face. But knowing that people are at home with you is something quite different than, you know, sort of a passive consumption of normal TV. So that sort of I started to feel that as I was working, and it calmed me down, and it made me sort of, I mean, the whole thing was still an adrenaline flash from start to finish, but it really kind of made me feel, it was very enjoyable to know that everyone was we were sharing a moment together, and that everybody was looking for a very good time and a very comforting time. And I had experienced that by participating on the other side of the camera in the weeks prior. So it was very nice.
And so did you really feel in the moment, did you get that sense of being part of this international paint along?
Yes, I did. I think so. I mean, you could hear some of the comments coming in, and that had been the thing that I was most worried about. People know that the comment section on the internet can be a dark and and difficult place. And that was evidence that, that you're not, and I think also the format takes away this very removed authority that television has, and so we're all kind of scrappily doing this together. And I did get a sense of that during the painting.
You seem to build a real rapport with Noel Fielding. How was that?
It was great, and that also helped me on the day. And I think, as Jo mentioned, that there's something about the screen, and as you can be vulnerable because you're protected by the screen, and so you can open up in a way that that maybe you wouldn't otherwise. And that surprised me, but I found it really enjoyable. He's also an artist, so it was nice to talk to him in that regard. I still have lists of questions. So I was like, oh no, I didn't, I didn't find out. I didn't find out the key to this, that, and the other thing. But yeah, it was fantastic, and really rewarding. I still think of aspects of our conversation, and I think it will show up in the paintings that I make hereafter, actually.
Right. I think that's something that comes through across Portrait Artist of the Year as well, as the relationship between the sitter and the artist. It's really nice to kind of be able to spend time over the 4 hours feeling like you're a part of that. Danielle and Charlie, I mean, in terms of the productions, obviously lots of similarities in the themes that are coming out, but it's quite different to the annual show. Charlie, you're the live producer. What are the differences of a weekly live show versus a pre-recorded series, and the particular challenges of this weekly show?
I mean, I think it's interesting. Others have touched on this idea of teams and relationships and communities. And I think that one thing that we're all really used to is the fact that we build and make teams and we work in teams, and those teams are usually face-to-face teams. Like, I mean, I've never met Adam, for example, and so I think that we're not meeting our production teams in the same way, but also our sitters and our artists may not be people who are TV people. So there's all these people that may need additional support. And I think that what we really, really try and do is make sure that we support both before the program goes out and all the way through the program, all of these people that are needing support, the artist and the sitter in particular. But we're trying to build a different kind of team and build these relationships to make sure that everybody feels safe and secure. There's people with earpieces in listening to talkback who've never had that before. And so, and the talkback is limited, and Adam will talk a bit more about that. But so we've got this kind of network of WhatsApp groups going on to make sure that, that the artist has got a WhatsApp to the production team, and the production team have got WhatsApps to the social team, and then Danielle and I have got WhatsApps. So there's all of this kind of web of communication going on that's not going through the talkback, that's actually trying to recreate that sense of being in a big team and working together for something, and that's been really interesting.
And how are you finding that? I mean, it's great that we have these tools to be able to create something like that. But it's a very, very different mindset psychologically. And how are you finding that? And how is it affecting, obviously with all the support that you're giving, how easy are you finding it to be able to do your job editorially?
I think it's really interesting. I think that you get used to the rhythm of it. So you get used to who you're going to be able to talk to, who you can hear, who you can't hear, who you need to go and WhatsApp. And once you get into the rhythm of it, it just works. I mean, it's helpful that with Adam, for example, you know, the talkback's very, it's very sort of restricted, so that only Adam is heard in the ears of the presenters and the judges and the artists and the sitters. So everything has to come through me and Danielle and then through Adam and to them. So it's about being really disciplined, but at the same time, really remembering all of the extra support and communication that everybody's needing, and constantly reminding yourselves that people need reassuring, people need reminding, and that we are in this team and the team's working together.
Great, thank you. Just before I come to talk a bit more about the technology, Sam, the celebrity sitter is a really key part of the show. How difficult or easy has it been for you to book celebrities to take part in this way and sort of explain the concept, and indeed to get them to free up 4 hours on a Sunday morning to sort of sit staring at a computer screen?
It's been a really new challenge, I suppose, going back to when we did the first series of Portrait Artist of the Year. I remember Danielle and I trekking out to Robert Lindsay's house to persuade him to do something that we had not done. And there was that challenge of no proof of concept, and will you sit in a room all day and have your portrait? Fantastic. So this came with, obviously, a lot of the people that we were approaching via their representatives we deal with anyway for the main show, so they hopefully know what we do and how we do it. But what became apparent very early on was I had this kind of fantasy that everybody's sitting at home twiddling their thumbs, but of course they're not. Creative people are, you know, using this time in creative endeavors, a lot of them, you know, with their own kind of, you know, streamed shows or writing or doing all sorts of things, and of course attending to their day jobs, if you like, and all of that stuff. So the other challenge was, you know, Sundays for a lot of these people who have kids and were homeschooling and needed time. The idea of, you know, would you like to have your portrait painted at home whilst you're sitting on your sofa? It wasn't as easy as that. But again, it got this momentum. The other thing is, you know, as Danielle said earlier, we had conceived it as this quite simple, just streamed day, and obviously it's become a lot more technically involved than that. But however, once we got Akram, and he was just so divine and really up for it, ditto Bernadine, it became very apparent to me immediately that the people that responded to it really wanted to just enjoy the process. And so then we kind of hit upon some themes. You know, we thought, well, we've got the dancer, you know, we have the Booker Prize winning author, we have the photographer. It was this kind of creative tribe. You know, Rob, he's just a brilliant intellectual barrister, but he knows probably more about art and these kind of things than many people. And we knew the 4 hours in the stream, what became very important here, much more so than the of the year show, is because obviously our sitters there, it's one sitter and 3 artists, and it's not that one-on-one, very intimate kind of conversation. And through Akram and then Bernadine, it became apparent that it was a kind of creative collaboration between the artist and the sitter, and it was the joy of the natural conversation evolving from that, and it was just 2 creative people really enjoying exchanging process. And so, like Phil, I don't paint, but it's just gorgeous to watch, and it's soothing, and getting to know people about, you know. And so there was the theme of creative people engaging with creative people, and those who we also knew would be able to sustain a conversation much more than they're required to in the of the year show. The other thing from the channel's point of view, which differs slightly to the main show when we were talking to Benedetta and Phil, is that it was more important, because obviously it's Facebook, that these sitters have a really reasonable and good social following. And so that was also a criteria in trying to select the sitters. And so that was it really. And sometimes, you know, the same challenges apply with of the year, where, you know, you've got a deadline and the Friday tech rehearsal is looming, and this one hasn't got back to you and that one hasn't got back to you, and you need to book someone, but you've got, you know, a few offers out, and then you're in danger of, you know, upsetting people if suddenly everyone comes back and says, yes, I want to do it. But that's just, you know, the nature of the thing. So, and obviously the team have done such a brilliant job. It becomes easier each week because you've got proof of concept. And then people think, oh, well, so-and-so done it, I'd like to do it. And, you know, so it's been a joy, really.
Fantastic. I'd like to remind you, if you're watching this, that we will soon be opening up for questions. I'm already seeing lots coming in from the audience. You can put your questions in the chat window on YouTube. You can also tweet us. We are at RTS London, one word, and using the hashtag PAOTW. But first, Ben and Adam, we've heard so much about this incredible and very complex technology that's had to come together. And I'd like to hear a bit more about how it was all made possible. So Ben, if we could start with you, how does it work? I mean, what technology do you use, and how do you go about setting it all up?
Well, we were faced, obviously, in the tech teams with a scenario which we weren't predicting, because we had backups in place if one of our buildings lost power, or if we weren't able to access Sky Studios, obviously, but we weren't anticipating that we wouldn't be able to get on site at any of our buildings across the whole of Sky, across the whole of the country, to make it programs. You know, obviously, we didn't anticipate that our workforce would also be locked away at home. So we wanted to continue to make programs and not just put out archive material. So we sat down for a bit and tried to work out a platform that would be accessible to all of the contributors to the shows, all of our technical teams, all of our content makers at home, and accessible really quickly. So we couldn't use broadcast equipment and configure it and send it out. It would take too long. So we looked for a solution that would, in kind of like Blue Peter fashion, allow us to grab bits of kit that's around the house, iPads, laptops, Android tablets, put it together, and remarkably, you know, make television with this kit that you have at home. So we looked for a gallery in a box solution, which we then hosted in the cloud, so everyone can link into it. It's not set at Sky, it's not set at someone's house. Everyone can actually log in and use it in the role that they're playing. And onto that gallery in a box, we've added graphics, we've added social media contribution, we've added links to our master control and transmission suites, and obviously linked into our pre-existing remote editing, because that was a remote project that was already up and running. And that became the heart of what we now call the Sky Virtual Production Suite. And it's really, it's expanded rapidly, as you can imagine, with all the content makers who want to go ahead and make programs, even in these awful times and difficult times. And so we have created suite after suite to allow everyone to do so.
So that's incredible. So I guess this is now something that you can just roll out and use in the future as well. How difficult is it to be able to make sure that everybody has the right bits of kit, that they're compatible, that you've got the right software on them? We've tried to make it really easy, and we are using iPads and Android tablets and things that people will have at home. But you know, I'm sure Adam's going to talk about how it's still quite demanding to ask everyone to configure it so that it works with our what we call bit rates and the configuration settings, and we've had to send out very carefully documented guides as to, you know, what buttons to press, because it's not easy without the support structures that we have at a studio where people can come in and help the presenters and the guests in a studio. You're asking a lot for people to make this work, especially when we also can't see the configuration that they've got at home. So
we're all guessing without being able to see stuff.
Yeah. And so Adam, we do have a short clip to show what's going on behind the scenes. But before we look at it, could you tell us a bit about what it's like for you running the show remotely and your process?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, there's lots of issues that we face that you wouldn't get in a sort of traditional setting, in a traditional gallery. So I think anybody that's used this system would say that talkback is probably one of the most challenging things that we have to deal with. And that's because everybody's using the same talkback. So we can get 8 people phoning in on this talkback. And so we have Joan is one, Charlie, myself, we have technical support, etc. So the problem is when, for example, a VT is playing, we hear that VT through talkback. And so trying to have a conversation with Charlie over that is really difficult. And when Joan is interviewing somebody, trying to speak to Charlie over that is really difficult. So there's often times when I'm actually having to phone people directly, which isn't ideal, just to hear what they're saying and what they're doing. And you've got other sort of like safety features that you would get in a gallery. You know, we don't have a sound supervisor. So we have to do everything there. We don't get tally lights. So I don't get, for example, I use an iPad to get all the VTs to line, and that's sort of my directing panel. You know, that iPad can crash, which it has done. You know, I've had my daughter's 7-year-old friend phone up, wipe that iPad out because she's done a FaceTime call. So, you know, unfortunately that happened in a rehearsal. And so you think, oh, okay, this is another challenge that I've got to overcome on the day before we do it. But I think, you know, the biggest challenge probably for me, apart from all these other things that you don't have, is just, I mean, it's Kimberly and the other artists that have the kind of like the biggest challenge, without a doubt. You know, Kimberly was talking about during the show how sometimes she'll sort of, you know, procrastinate about going out and going to a gallery, going to her studio to paint, and she'll think, oh, I'll go in 10 minutes, and then, you know, an hour later she still hasn't gone. And what we're asking of them is like, oh, actually, can you go to your gallery at 9 a.m. on a Sunday morning and set up 3 cameras, download loads of apps. You know, you're working very much outside your sort of comfort zone. You're going to be held up to sort of critique, as Kimberly said, by our judges, by the public. Your technology could fail, our technology could fail, the sitter's technology could fail. You know, and they're having to take that all on board and do and paint and talk and everything else. So I think, you know, my biggest challenge is just trying to make them sort of comfortable with the technology, and, you know, if things go wrong, for them not to worry, and that, you know, we've built processes in that we can cover anything.
Wow. We've got a clip here where we can hear some of that talk back. So before we play the clip, if we can just get it up on the screen, I wonder whether, Adam, you could just talk us through what we're looking at here.
Yeah, so that's sort of like a traditional, you know, sometimes what you'd see in a gallery, actually. So we've got program, the big box on the top right. We have a preview on top left, and then we have our inputs. And so we keep things kind of fairly simple. There's 2 cameras there that Kimberly set up, but she also has to set up a separate one independently of that, which we don't use on the show, but is used for the time lapse. We did have initially 2 cameras for the sitter, but we decided early on that one of the other problems we have to overcome is that we use high-res cameras and there's a delay. So we have to deal with a delay in cameras. So we decided early on that it was easier just to use one camera with the sitter, which made all our lives simpler. Obviously, we see Joan there. And then we have our judges. So we can never see all our judges at once, just because they have to use the same dialing code to get into vMix. And then we have graphics sort of bottom right. And then, as I said, independently of that, I have an iPad that our technical people sort out, and it's literally, it's like it's touchscreen, and it's a button push. So, you know, I can just put Joan to line, I can put a VT to line. What you don't see there is the VTs and stuff. So there's lots of things you actually don't see on there that we do actually use. But yeah, that's kind of basically it in a nutshell.
Great, so let's play the clip, please.
10 seconds. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and we are on air. Stand by, Joan. And cue Joan.
Hello and welcome to Portrait Artist of the Week, our global paint-along on Facebook Live. Now, last week, Will Young, the singer-songwriter, sat for a very distinguished artist, Christian Hook. And not only was it a pleasure to watch him paint and the other sit, but we enjoyed very much the conversation between the two of them as their friendship blossomed. Now, we want you to join in that again today. You send in your paintings, of course, but we also like you to join in the conversation. We like you to send questions and comments and ask the judges what they think, indeed ask questions of the sitter and the painter. So we'll enjoy that together. But of course, you haven't yet seen the painting that was finished by Christian because he had the whole of the week to finish it. And here it is.
It was great to get a little taster of just how much is going on behind the scenes. And I think for a lot of people watching this, many of us work in television, that's quite familiar, but for a lot of people it just comes across as this absolutely seamless program and you have no idea what's going on in your ear, all the more so you can't see anyone in front of you. I'd like to come back to Danielle and Phil in a moment and just find out a bit more about what we can expect in the future. But I have a quick question from Zara, who asks, what advice do you have for young people wanting to get into floor managing and studio work? And how did you get your foot in the door at Sky and other similar production companies? I think, Adam, can I throw that one to you first of all?
Yeah, I mean, I started running like a lot of people did at a company called CTV. And I actually sort of went off to try and forge a career in editing and kind of fell into a job, vision mixing. And I loved it. I love vision mixing. I loved the liveness of it. I loved that, you know, you come off air and you go home and you're not stuck in an edit suite trying to fix 1 second of, you know, VT for 4 hours. And so I eventually, I worked at CCTV for a while. I was then freelance and I eventually applied for a job at Sky because I hadn't done any sport. And Ben Burdon was very kind enough to give me a job. So I have a lot to thank him for. Yeah,
I'm the lucky one, Adam.
I would say, I think getting into TV now, I think it's all about multi-skilling. I think it's a real bonus if you can do a lot of things. I think technology is changing so much, and there's sort of, we're doing things remotely now. Automation is sort of happening, and so I think if you've got a good engineering background and you can multi-skill, I think you'll do very well. In terms of like floor managing, I think it's just trying to get in somewhere. It's, if you can get that experience on, a sort of, I say a lesser channel, but sort of like a lot of people have come through Sky that have started on shopping channels, for example, and sort of like cut their teeth there. So I think it's trying to find somewhere in, however you get in, whatever job you do as a runner or whatever, and then look at the jobs that are there and see what you like.
Do you have anything to add to that, Ben?
Yeah, I would just say that, like Adam, I started as a runner at Sky 30 years ago, and people are very generous. And I think if you can get in, use that generosity, use the knowledge that people in all roles, whether it's floor managing, vision mixing, directing, they're willing to share with you. And if you show an aptitude and an interest, people will invest their time in you, and that is what that's money in the bank. That's beautiful to take and then go on and forge a career from that. I think that's probably the best way, is to just rely on people's generosity.
Great, thanks so much. I'd just like to share a couple of comments that are coming in. Alison Kelly says, it's great being live. It's like joining a painting group in real time for tea, chat and painting. And Reza asks, well, she says, I don't paint, but after engaging with Portrait Artist of the Week, it turns out that I do. I discovered new things about myself and the art of the possible, and perhaps wonders if this is a new evolution in television, which is just fantastic to hear. And so, Danielle and Phil, I understand that you actually extended the run of the programme from 4 to 8 weeks because of the overwhelming support from the audience. Have I got that right? And how many more episodes might we have? Danielle, can we go to you first?
Yes, well, we were originally going to make 4. And the thing about this show is that it's entirely interactive. So from the moment you start, you're getting Facebook comments. And we could see that there was a lot of love for it very quickly, and that built and built and built. We started getting quite emotional outpourings. People, I remember an artist locked down in Spain that said that this is the first time I felt like part of a community. And we realized that unlike the Portrait Artist of the Year, this was more about community than competition. So although we asked people to send their portraits in Instagram and the judges have fun choosing their favorite 3, it's not, the competition is not what it's about community. So we just got to the point where we realized there was a lot of love for it, and then people started saying, please don't finish this. And it's quite interesting as television people to have your audience instantly talking to you like this, and more people were saying, it's keeping me going. And it started to feel like it was actually, without wanting to sound too grandiose, like it was really helping people's mental health. You know, people felt like they were really part of a creative community. So they commissioned 4 more. So we are currently in week 8, and actually we have a little bonus episode as well. We're doing 9. We've got the fantastic Mary Beard sitting for us next week, and that just felt like too good an opportunity to pass up. But then we've really got to get on with making our main series, which we are making and which is going out in September. We're filming that in a few weeks' time in this obviously safe and socially distancing way. But yeah, it's been overwhelming. It's been really emotional. It's felt really good, actually. It felt like we were doing something really lovely for people at a really awful time.
Phil, how has it been received?
Yeah, so I mean, just to add to that, really, it's been really interesting that, you know, what Danielle is alluding to, that it's an experiment in building a community around a passion point and a shared interest. So that's something that we're going to sort of be taking forward and thinking about a little bit more generally on the channel. And the reason we kept going with it as well is that if you consider episode 1, we generated 70,000 views, and by episode 6, it was getting over 210,000. So it's, if something builds steadily week on week like that, you think you're pretty much onto something. Most television, episode 1 happens, it gets a lot of people that come to it, and then it tails off quite dramatically. So it's the trend, that's the general trend in sort of television. And then over the 7 episodes, it's reached 3.1 million people. Which is really significant. And then I love this because our social media people track sentiment on Facebook as well. And I don't know why they've done it this way around, but the hashtag My Portrait Art of the Week is 0% negative sentiment, which means it's 100%. But that's unusual. And actually, Kimberly was talking about that. It's quite scary to put yourself in front of a social media audience, because they can be quite sort of febrile environments. And when I've been watching it, it's just been a kind of massive loving. And I think that speaks to that sense of community, that sense of sort of, you know, tips that people can share, not just with the artists that are in residence that week, but kind of with each other as well. And you can see sort of friendships forming. And as with any community like that, as soon as somebody says anything that's vaguely negative, everyone sort of pounces on them, I guess. So look, I mean, it's one of those things that I think we'll always assess things after they're finished, and we'll kind of have a think about what this sort of means for how we make television going forward as well. But as Danielle says, these guys now need to get on with the very difficult task of producing a program as we're kind of in this confusing lockdown. Are we in lockdown? Are we out of lockdown kind of state? I'd just like to pay tribute to the technical people on this, because my goodness, Ben was talking about this, almost a brand new way of making television was created almost out of nothing. And you know, I have no clue how these people put these things together, but I thank God they do. And it's like watching Apollo 13. That
went wrong, didn't it, Phil? That went wrong.
Lockdown was the thing that went wrong, and the NASA that created the tinfoil stuff that got
absolutely. It was very like that. Yeah, we could only use what we had at home. That's it.
Actually, just to add to that, I do think something interesting has come out of this in terms of the new informality. When we first started, we were so TV about everything. We're used to making very slick, glossy programs, and Storyvault, we kind of pride ourselves on sort of high production values. And the first show, anytime anything went wrong, somebody's, you know, internet went, and obviously everyone's self-filming, you know, we all freaked out. Then we started realizing there's something really fun and interesting about things going wrong. I mean, you know, we've had babies, we've had dogs, we've had, you know, and actually there was something about it that just felt, it really added to the fun. And as soon as we let go of our very slick TV values, we actually found that there was something people really responded to. And actually, because we could see what the audience was saying, the second week we had problems coming on air, you know, actually getting onto Facebook, and people were sort of putting apologies up, and people were saying, hey, don't worry about it, we're just happy you're doing this, you know, we're just, you know. And Joan, I mean, I just got to pay tribute to Joan, who, you know, sits there, and I mean, when I FaceTime my mum, it takes me 20 minutes of saying, mum, turn the sound on. You know, Joan is broadcasting live for 4 hours every Sunday, and you know, still a total and utter legend.
We've got a couple of questions here. Asking, Carmen asks whether you would consider a similar landscape artist of the week style show. We've got a question from Kerry about whether you'll carry on out of lockdown, and sort of tying it all up, Mike Drury does ask whether even when the Portrait Artist of the Year comes, would you like to keep some elements of this weekly audience engagement, sort of like a wild card idea?
Do you want me to do that one?
Yeah, go on.
Look, I mean, it's something we've actually talked about, and it's yeah, like I said before, you kind of have to get to the end of something and then do a bit of assessment and research around it. But it's undoubtedly been successful. So I think it's kind of a potentially interesting model for a spin-off show that accompanies a main show. So it's something we've started to talk about. I couldn't say for sure at the moment.
I think that's a commission.
That's true for you, honestly.
So currently the future is that we can expect 9 episodes in total, and we have Portrait Artist of the Year airing in September.
Airing in September, and you guys are going straight on to try and do Landscape Artist of the Year, and the franchise. It's just, look, it's our most popular show, so we love it, and you know, we love this version of it too.
And just before we wrap up, Simon asks, who would be your dream sitter that you haven't had so far? So Charlie, I'm going to throw that one to you and to Sam.
Charlie, you go first.
Gosh. Well, we had talked about having Joan Bakewell.
We do. We talk about that constantly.
I've got an idea. I think it'd be great to have Elton John.
Yes.
We'll
put in a word for us.
So if anyone is watching this who knows Elton, please put a word in for us. And Kimberly, tell us a bit about what this has done for you, obviously being a finalist in Portrait Artist of the Year, and then featuring in Portrait Artist of the Week. How has it changed things for you? Has it changed?
It's changed my life massively, to be honest. Prior to Portrait Artist of the Year, I was sort of painting on the faith of myself and very patient family members. And it sort of was my proof of concept, I suppose, for the organization of the rest of my art career. I mean, it sort of gave me an art career and gave me an audience. It's a model as an artist who, like me, didn't go to art school, to university. You have to get your work in front of people who can judge its value. And so part of it is you're submitting regularly to juried shows and to competitions. And I can remember watching Portrait Artist of the Year and being a huge fan and looking and saying, you know, I think I could do that. And putting my application in and getting in, and, you know, it's sort of, it was a successful version of the model that I think a lot of artists are practicing, which is, you know, put your work out there, get it seen. And of course, I mean, it was seen by very many people. So it did have a huge impact and has afforded me opportunities until now. And it's been really nice to be able to, because it was so successful for me and such a positive experience, it's something that I have a lot of, you know, quite emotional about. So it's really nice to have participated now and to be able to see Joan and to see, you know, the jury again. You know, it sort of felt like I could go through the camera and hug them. And it's like, it's so nice to see you again, to have, yeah, shared that really positive experience. My family came when we filmed in 2017, and I don't get to share a lot of, you know, big events and successful events in my life with my family. So it's you know, has a very special place in my heart for all of those reasons.
I'm afraid that's all we've got time for. We could keep talking all day, I think. I'd like to leave you with one more comment that's come through from Robin Cappy, who says, supporting the artist and connecting from across the ocean from New York City is a thrill, particularly during quarantine. It's been really fantastic to talk to you and to talk about this international paint-along that you've created, and long may it continue. I'd like to thank you all for giving us your time this morning. Joan, Phil, Danielle, Sam, Kimberly, Adam, Charlie, and Ben. Thanks to everyone who's watched. A recording of today's session will be available on YouTube to watch again. So do tell your friends about it. Thanks to all of you and have a really great rest of the day.